Alrighty, mealtime everyone, and welcome back to X4 Foundations. In the video about the current state of space games, I said I hold back on my decision whether to recommend X4 or not until I spent a little bit more time with it. I also wanted to find out if it is necessary to dive deep into the economic or building part of the game, or if you can just fly around and do some missions and keep your head above water this way. I'm now a little over 20 hours into the game, and I think it is possible to just get by doing missions, buying a heavy-sized fighter and beat the story missions this way. But if you do that, you miss out on most of what the game has to give. You see, X4 is kind of a combination of genres. It's a space sim, a building game, and also a real-time strategy game. You can coordinate ships to mine minerals, build stations to turn these minerals into goods. You can have traders looking for the best deals in a certain radius of systems. You can also build defense installations to protect strategic important points. You can build and coordinate large fleets to defend sectors and raid those of your enemies. And best of all, you can get into a cockpit of your fighter or on the bridge of one of your capital ships and be part of the action. Once you cleared out sectors, you can claim them as your own. You can have your own police force and set the rules. For instance, you can decide what's a contraband and what's legal. However, all that comes at a price. You may have noticed that I stopped recording my game progress after the 4th session. The reason is that it's getting increasingly boring to watch. Once you get through the initial fooling around phase, you spend more and more time coordinating stuff, miners, traders, stations, and that means you spend more and more time on the map. You can automate a lot of things, but if you want to continue to build your empire, you have to manage a lot of things. And you have to do that from the map. And there you will have to deal with one of the worst interfaces of all time. As long as you're just flying a ship, trade a little bit here and there, doing missions, everything is pretty intuitive and easy to understand. But once things getting more complex, everything gets more and more confusing. You're inundated with text messages, menu options, graphs, statistics on all sides of the screens. And sometimes things aren't really logical. For instance, you can send word to bring resources you need to build your station. You set a price and then AI ships will come and deliver them. But with my solar power plant, the hull parts never were. So I got into my little trader and bought the hull parts myself. But when I wanted to unload them at the building storage, it didn't work. So I asked an AI pilot to do it. And that worked. This isn't really understandable. And another thing is that the game picks up the pace pretty quickly. After about 20 hours that I'm in the game now, the Xenons already started to raiding core worlds. And the AI factions are not very effective in stopping them. They don't assemble fleets to meet the enemy at strategic important points. That seems to be your job. So you need to act pretty quickly or your own stations will fall victim to enemy attacks. The clunky interface really doesn't help with that. I continue my current save and see how far I can get, but I doubt I will be able to catch up after all the fooling around that I did at the beginning of the game. So do I recommend the game? Well, that depends. If you just want to fly spaceships, I still think Elite Dangerous is the best choice. But if you're not afraid of diving deeper into the more drier bits of the game, X4 is absolutely worth it. There are more than 200 ships waiting for you. If you permutate all the ships, weapons, shields, engines, combinations, there must be millions. The sheer number of possibilities is so motivating to me. There's always stuff to try out, always stuff to do, always stuff that you haven't done before. I personally can't wait to kick a Xenon K in the butt. But beware that getting there is very time consuming. But boy, it will be glorious. Before I end the video, here are a couple of tips. If you decide to play the game. First, don't do what I did. Don't try out too much, don't fool around too much at the beginning. Yes, I said I don't want to watch guides and read tips and all that, but it's really helpful here because trying out and experimenting with this is really frustrating because the interface is so unintuitive, at least when you get into a more complex part of the managing stuff. Another tip is don't buy S-size traders or miners. The M-size are just 10 to 20% more expensive and have like 5 times the cargo capacity. So it's not worth to buy the S-size ships, at least not the mining ships and the cargo ships. And build a solar power plant in Bright Promise. As soon as you have about 1.5 million, that thing will rake in money really quickly. There's one last thing that I want to address, and that's mods. There are a lot of mods out there that make your life easier. For example, the game it's if you want to do global trading or auto trading, it's very important that you are always updated on the prices of these of every station in the galaxy. You can do that by placing satellites, but the range of these satellites is very small, so you have to fly from station to station and place these satellites. There is a mod that kind of you drop one satellite in the system and then it covers all the prices from all the stations that you already have discovered. You still have to discover the stations. So that could be considered cheating technically, I think, but flying from station to station and dropping a satellite isn't really super awesome gameplay. So yeah, I wouldn't see it as cheating. I personally only use a mod that brings back music from older X games. It doesn't really seem to work though, but yeah. So that's my conclusion on X4. It's definitely worth it. You can do a whole lot of shit. There are so many ships, there's so much stuff to do, there's so much stuff to try out. It's really awesome, but the price is a really clunky interface, a really bad interface, and that you have to invest a lot of time. But the reward is, I think, worth it. So depending on how much time you have. Elite Dangerous for just fooling around, just flying spaceships, just having fun for an hour or two. X4 if you can get deeper into it, if you have more time and more willing to invest more into that. I see you in the next one then. So tschüss, ne?
Successfully docked.